everyone, welcome to my booktube channel. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out today's video. I really appreciate it. I am so excited to be doing today's video. I'm going to be discussing the first 3 books in a series of unfortunate events. Due to the fact that this is a series that has 13 books in it, unlucky 13, genius, I'm going to be doing videos that have 3 or 4 books in them in total. So I'm breaking these down so that I'm not going to be discussing 13 books, making this a really long video. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to see all the unfortunate events related videos. Since I'm going to be discussing 3 books today, I'm going to include this transition so that if you do not want any spoilers, you won't hear anything to ruin your own reading experience. I'm going to warn you now, these are book discussions, not book reviews. I am going to be including spoilers. I want to talk about the actual books themselves and the literary value of these characters and settings and things like that. If you do not want to know the ending or key events, please do not watch this video. I am also going to preface that I'm going to be referring to Lemony Snicket as Lemony Snicket. I know it's a pen name for Daniel Handler, but there's no fun in referring to the author's real name when the pen name is actually in the books, and I will get to that in later discussions. I'm going to be discussing the first 3 books in a series of unfortunate events. Because, let's be honest, I love these books. I think they're so well written, I am in awe of the creativity, and there's so much to be discussed. I cannot just do 13 books in one video. It is impossible. So when the show premieres on Netflix, you're all caught up with the Baudelaire's unfortunate events. The first book in the series is, of course, The Bad Beginning. The title reminds me of the saying, from bad to worse, and the scenarios these children are placed in keep going from bad to worse to worse to worse. If you are someone who studies literature, and I'm guessing if you're watching a booktube video, you enjoy reading literature, chances are you know there are some sentences that are always referenced. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Or simply, call me Ishmael. One of my personal favorites? It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. The first line in The Bad Beginning truly sets the tone for the rest of the series. If you are interested in stories with happy endings, you would be better off reading some other book. In this book, not only is there no happy ending, there is no happy beginning and very few happy things in the middle. This is because not very many happy things happened in the lives of the 3 Baudelaire youngsters. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny Baudelaire were intelligent children, and they were charming and resourceful and had pleasant facial features, but they were extremely unlucky. And most everything that happened to them was rife with misfortune, misery, and despair. I'm sorry to tell you this, but that is how the story goes. As someone who studies rhetoric, I loved this opening passage for so many reasons, and it's hard to just condense this all into one video. I am absolutely in love with this writing style, and it makes me so excited to talk about. To start this conversation, he refers to you as the reader. Very rarely in fiction novels or fiction stories in general do authors have a call to action or call to the reader. The inclusion of the word you is very difficult to achieve well in writing, particularly literary fiction. I think the word you is truly difficult to incorporate, yet it was done in a seamless way, and you as the reader will hopefully become more engaged in the story based on how he's laid this out. Snicket also uses the word happy several times in that opening passage. Usually an editor would immediately try and find a synonym, pulling out their thesaurus. The word happy is used over and over again to reinforce the fact that it is not a happy story and try and instill a sense of what the word happy means to the reader. The book can also get away with this because it's written for children. The first location the reader is brought to is Briny Beach. If you read the series or you plan on watching the Netflix show, please pay attention to the names and locations. Lousy Lane, Miserable Mill, they all foreshadow the events to occur, and they truly make me laugh. Some of them are just completely ridiculous, and you have this anticipation of what is going to happen next. In regards to characters, we have Violet, who is 14 when the series begins. She is an inventor, and whenever she's thinking intently, she pulls her hair back with a ribbon. Klaus is 12 and an avid reader. He wears spectacles and is a little bit shorter than Violet. And Sunny, who is the baby Baudelaire. She is an infant when the story begins, and she loves to bite things. I believe her character is what truly helps make this an absurdist fiction story. Mr. Poe has the unfortunate job of telling the Baudelaires that their parents passed away. As a character in this series, Mr. Poe is completely useless. Each child alone has an IQ significantly higher than Mr. Poe as far as I'm concerned. He is a lot of fun to read because as an adult, he should be more intelligent than the children, yet the children are the ones who are always informing him about what's going on. Yet, even once he knows what's going on according to the Baudelaires, he does nothing. The story opens with the three Baudelaires finding out from Mr. Poe that their parents passed away in a tragic fire. The children are brought temporarily to live with Mr. Poe until their new guardian can take them in, Count Olaf. He is an actor by trade and often travels around the world with various theater companies. I thought he was a count, Klaus said. He is both a count and an actor, Mr. Poe said. I have never figured out officially why he's called Count Olaf. From what I can tell, Count Olaf is called Count Olaf because he gave himself that title. Given the nature of his profession as actor and all the disguises he eventually will go through in the series, it makes sense, given his characterization, that he would lie about his name. This is probably one of my favorite scenes throughout the entire series. The Baudelaire children looked out and saw the prettiest house in the block. The brooks had been cleaned very well, and through the wide and open windows one could see an assortment of well-groomed plants. Standing in the doorway with one hand on her skinny brass doorknob was an older woman, smartly dressed, who was smiling at the children. The woman, dressed as Strauss, then clarifies that that is not the home the children will be living in. The children looked from the well-scrubbed house of Justice Strauss to the dilapidated one next door. The bricks were stained with soot and grime. There were only two small windows which were closed the shades drawn, even though it was a nice day. Rising above the windows was a tall and dirty tower that tilted slightly to the left. The front door needed to be repainted, and carved in the middle of it was an image of an eye. The entire building, side to the side, like a crooked tooth. Expectations? Reality. This scenario sets up the entire series. The children will see something that looks nice and as though it will be a great option for them, and then something else happens. It is also simply very well written. When Count Olaf is introduced, he is a tall, thin man with one eyebrow. My favorite part of his introductory dialogue is when he asks the children to wipe the mud off of their shoes, as if his house was clean. Count Olaf was neither interesting nor kind. He was demanding, short-tempered, and bad-smelling. And I also wanted to mention that libraries and books tend to represent the good characters in the series. Justice Strauss has an immaculate library that the characters are drawn to. By having books, the readers can deduce that Justice Strauss is probably a good character who is well-educated and well-informed, and thus there to help the children. The characters who do not have books and do not support reading should not be trusted. While books can mean a character is someone to be trusted, wine and drunkenness can be associated with characters who are not to be trusted and are probably villains. Count Olaf and his theater troupe are always drinking, and whenever Count Olaf asks for red wine, or another character asks for wine or something, it can be inferred they are probably a villain. Snicket also has a tendency to talk to the readers as if he's speaking with them one-on-one, or if they are a part of the story. Unless you have been very, very lucky, you have undoubtedly experienced events in your life that have made you cry. So unless you've been very, very lucky, you know that a good long session of crime can often make you feel better, even if your circumstances have not changed one bit. Throughout the series, the children just simply want a safe environment to live. The Baudelaire children do not have these grandiose dreams of sorts. They just want a safe home. Count Olaf, on the other hand, is motivated for this constant desire for greed. He wants the Baudelaire fortune and will do anything to get his hands on it. His first attempt is marrying Violet, who is 14 years old, and from what the reader can deduce, Count Olaf is old enough to be her father and then some. It is about a man who is very brave and intelligent, played by me. In the finale, he marries the young, beautiful woman he loves in front of a crowd of cheering people. You, Klaus, and you, Sonny, will play some of the cheering people in the crowd. But we're shorter than most adults, Klaus said. Won't that look strange to the audience? You will be playing two midgets who attend the wedding, Count Olaf said patiently. I'm curious how the viewers are supposed to know that Klaus and Sonny are playing midgets if they're just members of the audience. And then in regards to Violet's role, you are going to be playing the young woman I marry. It's a strange scenario to say the least, and it's also prefacing the creepiness of Count Olaf. And that's putting aside the real issues the marvelous marriage actually has. Once the children realize Count Olaf's evil plan, they go to confront him, only to find out he has kidnapped Sonny. One of the many examples of why I think she is a plot device. Count Olaf is holding Sonny hostage in a cage in his tower so that Violet has to go through with the ceremony unless she wants Sonny to get hurt or die. Even the adults who want to help the Baudelaires don't believe them, leaving the children to fend for themselves. Violet had to find her own way out of marrying Count Olaf for real. She used her left hand instead of her right, forcing the contract to be null and void. The book ends with Count Olaf getting away, threatening to come back for the Baudelaire fortune, and the children being left for Mr. Poe to find another new guardian. This ending archetype sets up the next 6 books in the series, and Snicket utilizes the same Mr. Poe ending, Count Olaf getting away scenario over and over again. The second book in the series is The Reptile Room. This book discussion is not going to be as long as that beginning because I think that book sets up the premise for the other ones. The stretch of road that leads out of the city past Hazy Harbor and into the town of Tedia is perhaps the most unpleasant in the world. Lousy Lane runs through fields that are a sickly gray color in which a handful of straggly trees produce apples so sour that one only has to look at them to feel ill. Lousy Lane travels the Grim River, a body of water that is 9/10 mud and contains extremely unnerving fish, and it encircles a horseradish factory, so the entire area smells bitter and strong. Now that is an unfortunate opening. But my truly favorite part of this book is their new guardian's name. What should we call him, Klaus asked. You should call him Dr. Montgomery, Mr. replied, unless he tells you to call him Montgomery. Both his first and last names are Montgomery, so it really doesn't make much difference. His name is Montgomery Montgomery, Klaus said, smiling. Yes, and I'm sure he's very sensitive about it, so don't ridicule him. His name is Montgomery Montgomery. Yeah, Snicket did that. The other name I enjoyed is the incredibly deadly Viper, who is a completely harmless snake. In the series, Snicket created his own archetypal story in which the Baudelaires go to a new location with a new guardian, only to have Count Olaf come and ruin the situation. Count Olaf arrives in a disguise and weaves his way into the Baudelaires' lives until something tragic happens, in which Mr. Poe arrives to take the children to yet another new guardian, in which Count Olaf will then reappear in another new costume, weave his way into their lives, something tragic happens, they leave again with Mr. Poe to find another new guardian. This is the first book in which Snicket implemented and created that archetype. My favorite part of the entire series occurs on page 153. Snicket included the word ever over and over and over again. We all know, of course, that we should never, ever, 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 goes on for several more lines, ever fiddle around in any way with electronic devices. Never. I also love the fact that the last ever is written in italics, so that you read it slightly differently than all the other evers. Count Olaf escalated his crimes in this book to include murder. He killed the children's Uncle Monty. At the end, Count Olaf evades authorities, and Mr. Poe has to find another new home for the children. The third book in the series, The Wide Window, has my favorite guardian, Aunt Josephine. She is off her rocker crazy, and I absolutely love reading about her. She is afraid of the most random items and potential occurrences. It is hysterical. For instance, she said, not too quickly. You could trip over the welcome mat and decapitate yourselves. Her fears are illogical, but they're so entertaining to read. She thinks the stove will burst into flames, so she never cooks anything. She's scared that doorknobs might shatter and a small fleck of it will get in her eye. And she also thinks that the telephone is going to electrocute her. Aunt Josephine's biggest fear, however, are realtors. It does have a plot element, though. The one enjoyment Aunt Josephine has, however, is grammar. Her character is just so convoluted. It is amazing and it's so much fun to read. She has some of the best one-liners throughout the series. Yet again, Count Olaf is doing well in his attempt to try and gain access to the Baudelaire fortune. He arrives in town as Captain Sham and wants to win over Aunt Josephine so that he can gain access to the Baudelaires and in turn get his hands on their money. For some reason, the children can see past his costumes and disguises, whereas the adults cannot. Aunt Josephine refuses to leave the children on the premise that there is no tattoo, and he looks nothing like the man who was described to her. Taking into account that the children lived with Count Olaf and then had to deal with him with their previous guardian, chances are they know he looks like better than a vague description given to her by an incompetent man. Yet Aunt Josephine refused to believe the Baudelaires, placing their lives in danger. And Snicket's sense of humor remained intact in this book. The United States Postal Service has a motto: neither rain nor sleet nor driving snow shall halt the delivery of the mails. All this means that even when the weather is nasty and your mail person wants to stay inside and enjoy a hot cup of cocoa, he or she has to bundle up and go outside and deliver your mail anyway. The United States Postal Service does not think that icy storms should interfere with its duties. Snicket's sense of humor, paired with Aunt Josephine's craziness, makes The Wide Window something you probably should add to your to-be read list. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts on The Bad Beginning, The Reptile Room, or The Wide Window, let me know down below in the comments section. And be sure to tell me if you're going to be watching the adaptation on Netflix. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great reading day.